Hello, children. I'm going to teach you the poem Fire and Ice by Robert Frost. Before I start explaining the poem to you, let me recite it for you. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction, ice is also great and would suffice. As you can see in the first slide, the poem Fire and Ice, written by Robert Frost, is a very short poem, but it has a very deep meaning. Step by step, I'll make you understand what the poem is all about. Let's first understand the key points of the poem. The children, these are some of the key points of the poem Fire and Ice. The first one being that the poem has been written symbolically, which means the poet has used symbols to convey his message. The poet says that there are mainly two opinions about the end of this world, one by fire and another by ice. So he has basically used fire and ice as symbols for human emotions. Fire has been used as a symbol for desire, and ice has been used as a symbol for hatred. So he's basically talking about the end of this world. How is it going to happen? By fire or by ice? Fire can spread, as we know, very fast, and it can cause a great destruction. Likewise, our desires may also prove very destructive if they go out of control. Hatred, for which he has used the symbol ice, also causes slow destruction, but it can also be very harmful. Now, before we start analyzing the poem in detail, let's discuss some points about the author. Robert Frost, the author of the poem, was born on 26th March 1874. He was born in San Francisco. Frost and his wife Eleanor Merriam moved to England in 1912 after they tried and failed at farming in New Hampshire. It was there that Frost met and was influenced by such contemporary British poets as Edward Thomas, Rupert Brooke, and Robert Graves. Robert Frost's poetry is principally associated with the life and landscape of New England, and he was a poet of traditional verse forms and metrics. However, he is anything but merely a original poet. He's essentially he belongs to the modernistic era of English literature, so he's a modern poet. And in his degree to which his work is infused with layers of ambiguity and irony. Now, what is the poem Fire and Ice about? Fire and Ice is one of Robert Frost's most anthologized poems. It was first published in 1920 in Harper's Magazine, and then again in 1923 in his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, New Hampshire. According to one of Frost's biographies, Fire and Ice was inspired by a passage in Canto 32 of Dante's Inferno. In that passage, the worst offenders of hell, the traitors, are submerged up to their necks in ice while in a fiery hell. The eminent astronomer Harlow Shapley also claims to have inspired Fire and Ice. In an anecdote he recounted in 1960 in a Science and Arts presentation, Shapley describes an encounter he had with Frost a year before the poem was published. At that time, Frost, noting that Shapley was the astronomer of his day, asked him how the world will end. So Shapley had responded that either the sun will explode or else the earth will escape this fate only to end up slowly freezing in deep space. So that's where this inspiration to write the poem Fire and Ice came from. Shapley was surprised at seeing Fire and Ice in print a year later, called it as an example of how science can influence the creation of art. So, Fire and Ice, a creation of art, a poem, was basically inspired by Shapley's explanation of how the earth is going to end. Now, let's try and analyze the poem. Robert Frost is basically talking about two different beliefs. He's talking about how the world is going to end. So, there are two different beliefs. The one belief supports that the world is going to end with fire, and the another belief supports that it's going to end with ice, so it's going to freeze. He says that there are majorly two kinds of people who believe in these two different beliefs. And Frost is in the favor of those who say that this world will end in fire. Why? Because he has seen the effect and result of uncontrolled and unending desires. He has used fire, as I already explained, as a symbol for desire. He finds the human desire same as fire in its nature. How you may want to ask me the question, how is fire same as a human desire? Now, desire means excessive love for something. When we human beings have excessive love for something, it becomes a desire and spreads like wildfire. And that desire devastates everything like fire. The second belief tells that ice is also sufficient for destroying this world. And the poet has compared ice with hatred. Now, hatred slowly kills another person, or hatred is a slow destroyer, like ice. He's used ice as a symbol for hate. Now, ice can make a part of body numb with its prolonged contact. Likewise, hatred can also give numbness to our mind and thoughts. And because of that, we become insensitive and cruel. That is when we start developing hatred inside our heart for people. And that slowly starts destruction and destroying our fellow human beings or whatever comes in its way. That's how hatred or ice is also going to be as equally destructive as fire. The poet brings us into the middle of an argument between two groups of people who think the world will come to a fiery end and people who think the world will freeze. So there is an argument between two different groups of people in this poem. And we are in the middle of that argument. So the poet Robert Frost could be talking about the literal end of the world, but he's also talking about the human power that they have to harm or destroy one another. So humans basically have this power to love excessively, to have desires, to have hatred, and this excessive love, this excessive desire, this excessive hatred can actually destroy them. Or with these kinds of emotions, they can destroy one another. Now, why the poet favors those who believe that the earth or the world is going to end in fire? He has had experience with romantic desire, which has taught him that passionate or hot emotions like love, which I already discussed, and lust have the power to turn the earth into a big fireball. So these human emotions, which are excessive love, excessive lust, desire, they have great power, such great power that they can turn the earth into a big fireball, which means they can end or destroy the earth completely. That is the reason, the main reason, that he favors the belief that says the world will probably end in fire. But at the same time, he has also experienced the other extreme, and the other extreme is colder emotions like hate. But he says these emotions also have great destructive power. They too can lead to the end of this world. Love gets all the publicity, but hate is a silent killer, as per the poet. It may not have the same grandeur as the fireball ending, but it can also do the trick, which means hate may not be as destructive as love, as fire, but like ice, it can also bring an end to this world. We understand that Robert Frost, out of his experience in the world, has concluded that emotions, human emotions like love, desire, passion, they have more destructive power than hate. But towards the end of the poem, he suggests that hate too can destroy the world. He wants basically to give a message to the mankind through this poem. What is the message? He wants people to shed these emotions of desire, the emotion of hate. He wants people to live in peace and harmony. Theme of the poem. By the end of the poem, both sides of the scale seem to be weighed evenly, which means ice, representing the cold, rational side of humanity, is as dangerous a weapon as the hot, passionate side. The title of the poem raises the possibility that both fire and ice can coexist, and they can coexist at the same time, maybe even in the same person. That's why he's titled the poem Fire and Ice, though he does say in the poem that he is more in favor of those who support the belief that fire is going to end the world. But towards the end of the poem, what we can conclude is he supports both actually, and he says there is a possibility that both fire and ice can coexist. Experience in both matters has taught the speaker that although ice or hate may not have the same grandeur as a fireball, it can be almost equally disastrous. So, Robert Frost has had experiences wherein he learnt that love is dangerous, and he also had experiences wherein he learned that ice or hate also is equally dangerous. So, we understand with this poem that Robert Frost had different types of experiences in his life. He met different types of people, he had different types of relationships. He understood this world, he understood people, he had his own perspective, his own opinions, and he wrote this poem, which was inspired by a scientific theory which said that this earth, the world, is either going to end in fire or with ice. It's either going to freeze. So he wrote this poem, and initially, in the beginning of the poem, it's very clear that he supports the belief that the earth is going to end in fire. But towards the end of the poem, he makes it clear that ice also has an equal power to destroy the earth. Literary devices present in the poem. Literary devices are poetic devices that you all are aware about. So the first literary device that you can find in the poem is assonance. Assonance, as you all know, is the repetition of vowel sounds in the same line, such as the long sound of aw in hold and those. In this line, hold and those. The same sound of o is repeated, so it's an instance of assonance. Alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of a consonant sound in the same line. For example, I hold with those who favor fire. So the consonant sound f is repeated in favor and fire. So it's an instance of alliteration. Imagery is used to make readers perceive things involving their five senses. For example, some say the world will end in fire, and to say that for destruction, ice is also great. So in these two lines, the poetic device imagery has been used by the poet. Some more literary devices. Symbolism. Symbolism is the use of symbols to signify ideas and qualities by giving them symbolic meanings different from their literal meanings. As I told you in the beginning of the presentation, that fire and ice have been used as symbols for desire and hatred, respectively. Anaphora is another literary device used in the poem. It refers to the repetition of a word or expression in the first part of some verses. For example, the first two words in two consecutive lines are same in this poem. Some say the world will end in fire, and in the next line, some say in ice. So some say is being repeated. This poetic device is known as anaphora. Personification is when we give human qualities to inanimate objects. In this poem, fire and ice are capable of destruction like humans. Therefore, the poet personifies fire and ice by giving them a mind which is capable of destroying almost anything. So we have given them human qualities. Sorry, the poet has given them human qualities. So the poetic device used here is personification. Enjambment, it is defined as a thought or clause that does not come to an end at a line break. Rather, it moves over the next line. So the same thought carries to the next line. For example, from what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. So the thought is carried on to the next line. It can carry to more lines as well. This is known as enjambment. So those were the literary devices used by the poet in the poem. So we understood with this presentation that Fire and Ice, written by Robert Frost, is basically about the end of this world, how the world is going to come to an end. It is either by fire or by ice. So the poet leaves this to us to decide what we believe in. So he is in favor of those who believe that the world is going to end in fire, but towards the end of the poem, he says ice also has almost the same power. So I hope you have understood the poem. Thank you.